Israel. Speaking of peace in the Middle East, Trump had this to say a couple days ago.
We have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes. You say
because
quickly.
everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them. Got it? Okay.
What is the deadline you're going to put on that? You say quickly, sir. Well, sir, you said quickly, but what is the deadline you're going to put on that before you take
period
action?
of time. Pretty quickly. A reasonable period of time.
It's going to use the reasonableness standard.
Reasonable.
Yeah, on that one. So we'll see what the reasonable amount of time is. And then this came out. So we talked about not yesterday, day before, one of those days. Hamas has, on at least one occasion, maybe more, lined up some people and killed them in the streets.
I accidentally saw a video, I think, last night.
I saw a video.
Ugh,
yeah,
man.
It
was even one where they blurred it, but they didn't add the blur for like 2 seconds after the shots took place.
I saw some unblurred ones, and I generally am good at shying away from videos where people get killed, but I saw like 7, 8 people get killed on the video.
It's wild.
I'm not happy about that at all. And I'm not happy that the people were killed. You know, Hamas says that they were working with Israel in some way or another, or they're trying to start some rival gangs, you know, stuff like that, militias, something like that. And it's it's a little complicated because I'm like, our position on this whole thing has been, this is none of my business. I don't want any of my money going towards this whole thing. I'm not a fan of Hamas. I don't like what they're doing. I think they're a bunch of terrible people, but I don't know why my tax money should be going to it. If Israel wants to fight them, like that's on them. They're right there next to each other. Like they can do that war. I don't see why I need to be paying for that thing. That doesn't have anything to do with me, you know? And so when I see Hamas like killing people in the streets, I'm like, oh, that's terrible. That's awful. But okay, like why is everyone supposed to?
Nate, we need boots on the ground.
Yeah.
We need special forces going door to door, sniffing out Hamas, keeping them from doing these public executions.
Well, to be fair, a lot of people have interpreted Trump's post that I'm about to read as he says we're going to put boots on the ground. I don't specifically see him putting U.S. boots on the ground for sure. I think we if anything, you'd see drone strikes. You know. I don't think that U.S. boots on the ground is something that anyone, including Republicans, want to see, and I think he knows that. But I've seen a lot of people say that that's what he said here. You can determine whether or not that's what he said here. He said, if Hamas continues to kill people in Gaza, which was not the deal, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
What else could that mean?
Going in, like, I don't know, our forces going in.
Nate,
to
the military needs a war.
Well, that's why we're trying to do Venezuela right now. Come on, one more at a time.
That's like a secret coup. We need like patriotic boots on the ground, setting up bases and stuff.
You want to be able to wave that flag, you know?
No, well,
feel
people,
good about it.
I don't. People do.
I got you.
But my thing is like, this is a way in which like Trump can do it and get away with it, I think. Like this whole thing seems to be set up to be like, all right, well, we're not going to like be involved in the war, but we are going to supply Israel with money and weapons. Cool. And then now it's devastated. Okay, we're going to broker this deal. And now like, it's kind of like the yellow line with Israel, whatever. If Hamas doesn't hold up into the deal, then okay, I'm the broker of peace, so I get to send in, you know, my army to assure peace in this region so that they can rebuild and things like that. I mean, and he would totally get away with it. Everybody would be behind it. That's how you turn MAGA from anti-war to like, you know, war. And then you realize the deep state be deep. It's
very deep.
It's deep, man.
It's deep state and all the time. So I wanted tell you my initial thought on this one. In response to, I saw DC Drano's post about this, and he said Hamas is murdering dozens of innocent people in Gaza with no due process. Now Trump just threatened to go in and kill Hamas. My response to this, I just want to make sure I read it so I don't mess it up. I said, I don't want to sound alarmist, but if the next step is to frame military intervention in Gaza as some kind of humanitarian mission to save innocent Palestinians, I think my head might actually explode.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, why does the United States government or the Israeli government give two S words about the people that they've seen executed in these videos? Just like a week ago, I was told that all the people over there were Hamas. They voted for Hamas. Everyone over there is Hamas. We just killed a bunch more Hamas terrorists. Any of those people in that
Including
video,
women and children, that was just fine.
just fine. You know, you got to break a couple eggs to make a bloody omelet, something like that. I think that's what they said. And
I don't get that, but
yeah, it's in the book.
yeah.
Yeah, I read that in the book. And so I will say it was on audio book.
Something like a bird in the hand is 2 fish for a day.
Yeah, you got to kill 2 birds while you're stoned.
Yeah.
And so,
Got it. Now that makes sense.
yeah, you get it?
Yep.
Okay. Any of the people in these videos I've seen could have been killed by an Israeli bomb, and all the people that are threatening to go in and bomb Hamas right now would have immediately made excuses for any of it. They would have just labeled them terrorists. They would have said, well, we got this one Hamas guy we got. And they'd be like, well, what about the other 25 people that you killed? Be like, oh, why do you hate Israel? You know, something like that. But now it kind of seems like,
Well, sir, the children on this playground were in my way.
yeah, of killing a terrorist. And so what do you want?
Terrorist who was hiding under the slide. What do you want me to do about that?
Yeah, what are you going to do? That guy had put his rifle under that baby's bed.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Then, so yeah, it seems more like an excuse at the moment to make sure that the military is still doing things and that we're still blowing stuff up. Trump did say a couple days ago that he was going to give Hamas a reasonable amount of time. There's no defined time period on that. In the first phase of the deal, Hamas was supposed to disarm, and everyone quickly realized that that was not going to happen. And so they weren't going to get the first phase of the deal done. And so they moved it on to the next phase, but there's no time horizon on that. And I don't know. I haven't seen specific stuff that like Hamas, like it's obviously terrible that they're rounding people up and killing them in the streets. Of course it is. Trump did specifically say that they could handle security on their end however they saw fit. And so I'm not exactly sure this is a violation. I don't know why the U.S. government and Israel care about this. Really, because they would have been just fine killing all of these people and their children just a month ago or a week ago. And so it just seems more like an excuse at the moment. That's what I'm seeing. You know, Thomas Massey said that no matter what, we got to find a way to spend like $50 billion a year on some new boondoggle somewhere.
Yep.
He continues to be correct on that.
That's just so weird because I was watching Armageddon, I think last night. I watched it a lot.
Yeah.
There's a key point in there where, you know, the general's talking to NASA and was like, we spend $250 billion a year on defense.
Last time I heard that, I was like, whoa.
And like, wow, that was 20 years ago, you know?
$250 billion a year on
now
defense.
We're 4 times that, $1 trillion. You know?
Yeah.
It's just wild.
We're about to get into...
We got to find somewhere to put it.
We got to shift gears here, although one thing slightly connected to what Charlie was just saying is going to be the money we're spending on defense, because this is going to affect the cost of things that we're paying for through our defense budget at some times. So this story initially happened a week ago, and you probably have heard of this story. You might have seen the stock market take a hit for a second. It wasn't like that big of it was an initial
have you seen
big
gold
hit.
And silver though?
It's up a lot, yeah. The market's scaring me right now. I've taken some off the table. Just that's not advice. That is not financial advice, but I have taken some off.
You're just
the
saying
table.
what you've done.
Yeah, I did. It's pretty bad. Even seeing like numbers come out saying that without AI data centers, our GDP growth was actually 0.1%. in the last quarter or in the last 2 quarters. I can't remember what it was. Now that came from Jason Furman at Harvard. He was in the Obama administration, whatever. Yeah, there's some stuff that's scaring me right now as far as the market goes. Anyhow, so China put limits on rare earths. And this mentions Xi's meeting coming up. So China announced a sweeping new rare earth export control on Thursday. This is last week, tightening global access to critical raw materials required for computer chips and defense technology, and ratcheting up bilateral tensions in a run-up to the meeting later this month between Trump and Xi. The new policies, which were unveiled by China's Ministry of Commerce and build on controls released in April, drive home how Beijing is using its influence over the rare earth supply chain as an important source of leverage as it manages a trade showdown with Trump. So this is not good, by the way, because China, well, as this says right here, China dominates global mining and processing of rare earths. They're very important, by the way. Laptops, fighter jets, medical equipment, all
Which,
kinds
by the
of
way,
stuff.
the U.S. used to dominate.
Yeah, that's what we're about to talk about. That's the next thing. How did it come to pass that China dominated the market when in the mid-90s, early 90s, the U.S. was the world almost the only supplier of rare earth minerals? And all of a sudden, here we are 20, 30 years later, and China is almost the only supplier of
I
rare
like how you
earth
framed
minerals.
it earlier that American rare earth extractors were driven into the arms of a shorter man.
And that's an accurate statement. There's nothing racist about that. Here's a picture right now of Trump standing next to President Xi, and it is in fact the case that the president of China is shorter than the president of America. And so I don't know what people got offended by earlier.
What?
Okay.
He's legitimately shorter.
Yes, it's just a factual statement. There's nothing. Yeah. So
And
Trump.
you didn't call him Chink or anything. You said President Xi. So
I didn't.
There's nothing to
I
be.
didn't.
There's nothing to be
I did
offended
not
about.
call him that. No. So in response to this, Trump came out and announced 100% tariffs on China, of course. So he could get more tariffs. So China said they didn't care about that, by the way. I'm trying to move pretty quickly for us to get to the meat of the issues, and some of this is old news. Trump also wrote that he would impose export controls on any and all critical software as he retaliated against China's new restrictions on rare earth minerals that are essential to the U.S. economy. He called it a hostile order. And here we go. China accounts for nearly 70% of the world's rare earths mining and controls roughly 90% of the global processing. And so those are the things. And then like right afterwards, because the market was freaking out, the market did drop like 5% that day. It's a pretty big drop for a day. Trump came out over the weekend. And he said, don't worry about China. It's all going to be fine. Highly respected President Xi just had a bad moment. He doesn't want depression for his country, and neither do I. The USA wants to help China, not hurt it. President DJT.
He's so good at this stuff.
By the way, the markets have been stabilized like since he posted this out.
He's so good so good at that.
Yeah, he boxes you into a position that you don't want to deny after he like boxes you into this position. It's smart, I think.
Like I can just imagine him having a phone call with him. It's like, President Xi, you're a highly respected person. I respect you very much.
A lot of people here love you.
Normally you do a bunch of really good things, but seems you've had a bad moment, and that's okay. We forgive bad moments because you certainly don't want depression for your country.
Yeah.
The USA is for you. We are for China. Doesn't matter what everybody else says. I'm for China. China's big. We know it. We love you. You just had a bad moment. Apologize, forgive, and we love you. It's like that's how I imagine his conversation goes.
I think that's how he negotiates like the peace in the Middle East. He's gone so hard on this is the end of the war. The war is over. And he takes that and he says it around people like Netanyahu and all of the other countries over there in the Middle East. And none of them want to be like, well, Trump has said repeatedly this war is over. Like how am I gonna get out of this one? I can't get out of this box. And a lot of times it's pretty smart. I hope it works. It's worked out well for him. many times in the past. We're going to take a little aside here to a newer thing that came out yesterday in relation to this. Don't worry, we'll get to the regulations here soon. The Trump administration, so announced by Besant yesterday, is going to set price floors across a range of industries to combat China.
What a great solution.
Besant says.
Price control.
Yeah. Now, we're used to price controls on the high end. There's a little bit different price controls on the low end. We have minimum wage as like a price control on the low end. You can't pay less than this amount for someone's labor. And in this case, we're going to do it with a product that's essential to like so many things in the United States. And we're going to say you cannot get that product for less than this amount of money. And they're going to make that price floor. Now, I haven't announced like the official plan on this. So some of this is just the news speculation on what this is going to mean. But you can't get that product for less than this amount. They're going to price it at a number that like American firms could compete with, you know, because they could get it cheaper elsewhere. And they're going to be like, well, you can't pay the cheaper amount for it. You got to pay this much. And there's that American company.
Yeah, here's another key point from this article. The administration could take equity stakes in more companies in the wake of China's new restrictions on rare earth exports.
Yeah.
He said. Oh, who could have predicted that?
Yeah, they're going to keep doing it.
What podcast would have predicted something like that happening? No one saw this coming.
I don't know. Must have been those guys that used to be sponsored by ProLon. Bob, I wanted to highlight Bob Murphy's post here because it was really funny in response to this article headline. He said, let's show those commies how we do things in the USA.
This is the box I was referring to, you know.
What box? Oh, that box. Yeah. That one. Yeah, sorry, I didn't get you. The Trump administration will set price floors across a range of industries to combat market manipulation by China. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told CNBC in an exclusive interview on Wednesday, China has driven foreign competitors in the rare earth industry out of business over the past 2 decades by using its global dominance in refining and processing to slash prices. Bessent said, quote, when you are facing a non-market economy like China, then you have to exercise industrial policy.
That's always the excuse.
It is. And
it's always the excuse.
There's a hint, there's like a little bit of truth here to where sometimes it's like one added factor in what's happening. It is the case that like China will heavily subsidize and print and like make their things cheaper than they otherwise would have been if like the market were allowed to operate. Like that's true. That's part of it.
All you have to do is make President Xi a cherry pie.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe a little cash underneath the pie.
There you go. Yeah, you give him some money.
That way he doesn't get the new road contract.
So now we're doing Shawshank Redemption at the moment. I'm sure everyone picked that up. It took me a second too, don't worry. Quote,
it's a fine pie.
You be sure to thank the missus for this pie. That fine pie. Quote, so we're going to set price floors and the forward buying to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and we're going to do it across a range of industries, end quote. The secretary said, without naming specific industries, the administration was looking at beyond rare earths. The U.S. also needs to set up a strategic mineral reserve, Bessent said. And so they're working on, we got a strategic oil reserve. We use that to manipulate markets at times. And so we'll do it with minerals.
So are we going to open up rare earth mineral manufacturing or refining and extraction so that we can set up a strategic mineral reserve?
So we're going to talk about, I know you keep for some reason wanting to talk about like the solution to the problem.
Oh.
Yeah. And like what actually caused the issue. The reason I'm bringing this in and the overall dumbest thing I see is that he doesn't talk about why we don't mine rare earths. It's just all because of China's market manipulation. That's all that's happened. Or it's because they're paying slave labor or something like that. And that's why we don't mine any rare earths. And like I said, like there's little factors involved in there, of course. They can do things cheaper if they're manipulating their markets or if they're using actual slave labor or whatever. Sure, that could be the case. Yeah, he does talk about...
Go back one real quick because this is important. The Trump administration has been working to stand up a domestic rare earth supply chain. The DoD or I guess the Department of War now, struck an unprecedented deal in July with MP Materials, the largest U.S. rare earth miner, that included an equity stake, a price floor, and offtake agreement.
Yeah.
So if you can't beat China, you just become China.
You got to beat China.
You just be China. You know? The only way for us to compete with China is to be China.
The reason
I'll see your communism and it raise you communism.
We'll talk about MP here in a minute because Mountain Pass was the biggest rare earth miner in the country. Probably still is technically, but that's where it like all used to come from. It's in California. What can you imagine happened to people that were mining things in the state of California? Yeah, turns out it got too expensive for them to do anything, and they went bankrupt, and someone started them back, and then that company that started Mountain Pass back actually got bought by a Chinese firm, and now Mountain Pass MP Materials is started back up again, and we'll try and get to that part. So this is an article from The Hill. I think this is earlier in the year, and so I want to get into sort of what's happened. They're talking about the rare earth mineral problem. They say looking ahead for solutions will require policymakers to examine the past. For the second half of the 20th century, America was the only major global supplier of rare earth minerals. The story of how we lost that dominance can help us act wisely today. How about that? The Mountain Pass mine in California was a global powerhouse until it shut down in 2002, unable to remain financially solvent in the face of stringent environmental regulations in the United States.
Imagine that.
At that time, China stepped in and began to accumulate a larger and larger share of the rare earth market. Ironically, for the sake of environmental protection, the U.S. sacrificed its domestic rare earth production capacity to the worst polluter in the world. And this is always sort of a funny thing that we tend to do. We're like, oh, we can't do this mining here in the U.S. It's bad for the environment. So we'll get our stuff from China, who does like almost no controls on whether or not they're polluting at all, worst polluter in the world. But we feel good because it's not right there. It's way, like, can't see across the ocean over there. It's way over there. And so everything's fine.
The only way to get to it is play golf with Nate.
Yeah.
And when he, tries to hit the ball, he digs a hole right to China.
That's a dad joke. Pulling that right out. Mountain Pass was opened as a uranium deposit.
I feel like this is too serious.
Yeah. Mountain Pass was opened as a uranium deposit, but came to supply rare earths for the electronic needs of the Cold War economy. Until the 1990s, it stood alone as the only major source of rare earths in the world. By 2002, the mine became defunct because to the U.S. government and major manufacturers, it no longer made sense to acquire rare earths from a U.S. source that was subject to stringent environmental regulations. This is from a different article, by the way. It made more sense to import the minerals needed from other countries, and China was happy to oblige. In 2008, a group of investors formed Molycorp to reopen the Mountain Pass mine with the intent of delivering a secure supply chain, but their plans failed, and eventually the mine was purchased out of bankruptcy by a consortium that included the Chinese-owned firm. Reducing red tape and bureaucratic inertia will lower costs and reduce risk. There is no reason that permitting the mine in the U.S. should take 5 times longer than it does in Canada or Australia, which takes me to this article from Quest Metals. What's impeding the U.S. from mining minor metals effectively? Remember, and we just want to get, why are we talking about this long and boring subject right now? We are in the process, first off, of a trade war with China. Okay. Heavily escalated by the fact that they decided to announce new export controls on something that is very, very important to our economy, not just for defense, but for all kinds of electronics. Very, very important. Why did they have that leverage over us in the first place? Because we overregulated our own industries out of existence and decided to start buying it from China instead because those businesses found it too expensive to do business in the United States. Something that has happened with anyone who complains, oh, these jobs, they left and they went to Mexico, or these people left and they went to China. It's much easier, really, for them to Like they've got the factory there, they're pumping stuff out. You don't have to put it on a gigantic ship, ship it across the ocean. This massive, massive ship, you know. But eventually they get priced out of the market. And it's not just paying too much for labor, although that's some of it. Then there's unions that you throw on top of it, which are terrible and shouldn't exist unless they're in completely 100% voluntary on all accounts, the employer and the employees. That's fine. And then there's all the different regulations, like environmental regulations, all over the place from many different regulatory bodies. Regulatory barriers and delays. The U.S. regulatory environment is one of the most significant hurdles for the mining of metals. Mining projects in the U.S. are subject to extensive federal, state, and local regulations, which aim to protect the environment and local communities. While these regulations are necessary for ensuring responsible mining practices, they contribute to lengthy and complex approval processes, which can stretch over several years, making it difficult to meet the rapidly changing global demand for critical materials. They talk about the National Environmental Policy Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, all sorts of stuff. And you might even think that like we're doing better than a bunch of other countries. I mean, there's countries like Australia and Canada where it can take only 1 to 3 years to get approval, to get permits for this mine. Permits for the mine. 1 to 3 years in Australia and Canada, which is a long time for permits, in my opinion. It's a heck of a long time for that.
Why does it take so long?
In the U.S., it's up to 10 years for permits.
We're talking about permits?
Permits?
You want to talk about permits?
Are you kidding me? Permits? Oh my gosh.
So basically a license to dig.
Yes.
Yeah. You need a digging license.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so
basically you could become a doctor and practice medicine in a shorter amount of time than it takes to get a permit.
Yes.
For a permit, because we're talking about permits here.
Yeah. Just that.
Okay.
Just that.
Or you could be a lawyer. You go to school, become a lawyer, and be a practicing attorney with your own firm set up.
Yeah.
By the time you would get a permit
to dig a hole.
To start digging a hole.
Mm-hmm. By the way, some good news. And so the reason I bring this up is here we are moving to price floors because we can't compete with China and saying, well, this is market manipulation. We got a non-market competitor. We're a non-market competitor. What are you talking about? That's the reason people went to China in the first place. There's no market here. We're making everything more expensive than it needs to be. And that is the solution that you first have to go towards. Now, bonus points to the Trump administration. We'll talk about it here in a bit because they do recognize this problem. They just need to recognize it faster and harder than they're recognizing it right now. I also had some good news. This is typically like a white pill kind of thing. Scientists reveal massive rare earth element reserve here in the United States, and they found out that coal ash contains a lot of these rare minerals that people are needing. Quite a lot of them, actually. They've identified different places where there's all these coal mines around the country. And guess what? There's already mines there. You know, it's a lot. $8.4 billion worth of rare earth elements locked inside the country's coal ash deposits. That's pretty good. That's not too bad. It'd be way cheaper, way faster to get to that point. Now there's a little bit of, they're still sciencing this out right now, the way that they're going to actually extract this. But hey, that's good. We've got even more resources that we don't even have to go getting these permits for, to go get. You know, that's good news. I got a story here about MP materials, whatever. We already kind of talked about that. As I mentioned, the Trump administration does recognize at least somewhat that there's a problem here because in March of 2025, back in the good old days of March 2025, they signed this immediate measures to increase American mineral production executive order. And it directed all the different people and all the different agencies to submit a report by this date within 30 days of this order and all that stuff of ways that they're going to streamline these processes. And that's good. That's fine. We got to find ways to just cut out as many of these regulations as we possibly can. I know Lee Zeldin has been out there trying to cut out a bunch of these regulations. What what frustrates me so much about this problem is that we are dealing with a problem solely by the government's doing, solely by regulators choosing. We used to be the only supplier of these minerals, and now China is threatening to cut us off, and that could be a bad thing. Now, getting back to the price controls, so we can talk about, maybe we'll mention AOC or Bernie Sanders here at the tail end of the show. Back in the old days, speaking of those price floors, I didn't even think about going to Nixon. I went to FDR, because stuff that was done during the Great Depression. We used to have something called the National Industrial Recovery. Well, it's called the National Recovery Administration. Came from National Industrial Recovery Act. And their job was just to over-regulate businesses and set price floors and price caps and all sorts of stuff.
That was to eliminate the cutthroat competition.
Because they had a problem.
Have that.
They had a problem back then. The problem was that prices were going down. And so they had to come in and set a bunch of price floors on stuff. In 1935, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously declared that the NRA law was unconstitutional.
Unanimously?
Yeah, 9-0, saying that it was unconstitutional. But don't worry, many of its provisions reappeared in the National Labor Relations Act that was passed like the same year that the Supreme Court said that the NRA was unconstitutional. So we should go ahead and get rid of the National Labor Relations Act too. That'd be fine.
The long-term result was a surge in the growth and power of unions.
Ugh. Gross.
God.
Now,
which, by the way, supported the mob.
The reason I wanted to talk,
the
reason I wanted to talk about this before we got into the healthcare stuff that AOC and Bernie Sanders were talking about, so we've been talking a lot about Obamacare lately, is this problem with Obamacare is tied to FDR doing price caps and price floors on certain issues. One of the
setting prices.
Yeah, setting prices for certain products. The wage caps, the wage freezes was one of the main things, which led to insurance being tied to your job. And so insurance being tied to your job, which, by the way, they got to buy that tax-free, pre-tax money. When you go to buy it, they've already taken their chunk, unless you got, one of those health savings accounts, something like that. That could help. And so then it made it to where when you left your job, you had to go shop for some new insurance at that time because it's no longer provided by your employer. What if you developed a pre-existing condition over the time that you were employed for those 20 years, Something like that happened. You go to leave your job, insurance tied to your employer. Why is it tied to your employer, not to you, the person?
Yeah.
Like, why did you leave this place and it's gone? Well, because of these wage controls, price controls that happened under FDR, instead of offering people higher wages, they offered people benefits. One of the benefits they started offering people was health insurance. So one of the things that also more and more people have health insurance, might as well use health insurance to cover more and more things that people are going to regular doctor's visits and stuff like that.
To be fair, it is easier to group people that work for the same employer.
In that pool,
so
yeah. An employer can purchase that plan. I get that.
Right. But there are other ways to group people.
Yeah.
You can be part of a group policy.
Not a ton of legal ways to group people.
What I'm saying is you can get a group policy in other ways. But employers obviously now the most popular.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to sell an insurance policy, a group policy to an employer, and they can reduce the risk pool that way.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to do a couple of these videos. My God, by the way, everyone needs to be here for Dumb Bleep of the Week tomorrow. Y'all got to be here. It's going to be...
I'll be here.
You're going to be here for it?
I'll be here.
Good. Yeah. Do you have like 2 hours?
Sure.
Of time to do it? Okay.
So I originally had nothing for tomorrow, and now like the morning's full.
Yeah.
Just and as short as possible.
But I bet we could go at like noon.
Woman.
Could probably go at like noon tomorrow.
For like at least an hour and a half? Can I schedule an hour and a half with you?
Noon to 3, something like that.
Okay. All right, just making sure. Okay.
By the way, I was squinting my eyes looking at that poster, and I just see a hammer and sickle.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Look how disgusting that poster.
We do our part. people apparently used to put up this poster, like in the windows of their shops and stuff like that, just showing that you were in compliance with all this stuff. They put people in jail, literally, for not being in compliance with all the rules that this agency set up.
Ugh.
And yeah, I was doing a little bit of reading about that earlier. Yeah, that's a gross sign. Tell you what, man, a lot of commie socialist crap came out of the early 1900s. It just hadn't been right since then. Let me tell you what. Let's listen to a couple things that AOC had to say. Maybe this will be for Dumb Bleep of the Week too. I just wanted to get Charlie's quick reaction on this.
Can I ask you on this to follow up? Because you said that it is federal law that people, undocumented immigrants, can't get Medicare, Medicaid, the Obamacare subsidies. Do you believe that should be the law, though? Or do you think undocumented immigrants should have access to federally funded health care?
I believe personally that health care is a human right. I believe that every person should be able to go to the doctor. But I believe that right now, federal law is the federal law. And that absolutely, that U.S. citizens and people who pay into our programs deserve to be covered by these programs. And I mean, once again, I do believe that the federal laws that we have on the books are appropriate.
But if
the
you
right
could
ones
choose,
to
do you believe that should be changed?
Pardon?
If you could choose, do you believe that the federal law should be changed?
I don't. I believe in a single-payer healthcare system where if you go in and you need a doctor, you can get the medical attention that you need.
Okay, let me just...
Can I ask you on this to...
It's like, let me just try and make this sound better because she sucks at this.
Honestly, I'm confused.
Yeah.
So she wants
She didn't answer the question is why you're confused about that. And I know
Is this like a woman thing or is it just... So, I don't know. Can the women help me out in this group?
Did any women in the group hear what she just said? How do you interpret her feelings?
Yeah. What is it that she said, by the way? Because what I heard was nothing.
Yeah.
It sounded like she feels as if people should be able to get health care. I'm on board with that.
They should be able to get health care.
I would love if every single person in the world could get health care. That would be great. And then she says, but whatever the federal law is, because I'm a federal, congresswoman, but it's the law. It is what it is. Undocumented, I don't know. But I want a single payer system. What is that? When somebody needs to see a doctor, they can see a doctor. Which, by the way, if you need to see a doctor today in America, you can.
You can see a doctor, yeah.
Yes. And in fact, it's illegal for them to ask you for any sort of payment before you see a provider. If you go to the emergency room, they have to see you before asking about whether or not you can pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now they obviously triage you. If you got the sniffles, you might be waiting there like 12 hours before they try to stitch someone back together who's been cut in half.
Yeah. It's tough. It takes a while.
So, yeah. But you could still, if you absolutely have to see a doctor, there is one available.
I still didn't get an answer to her question, though, that she was asked. I believe in a single payer. So in a single payer system, our government would pay for everyone. I what I love about this, but I forgot about the illegals part of this conversation, and we're not going to have time for the Bernie thing because I'm about to pee my pants. What I love about this is she sort of gave us a thing that we're going to be able to nail down when it comes to talking about the single payer Medicare for all thing. Like what? So you want to pay for healthcare for illegal immigrants? You want the United States government to pay for that for everyone who comes here? Not even dealing with insurance companies. We're not dealing with Medicaid anymore. We're not doing any of that stuff. There's just anyone who makes it inside the boundaries of America that we're going to pay for whatever healthcare needs they have. When you say it that way, it's pretty stupid, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty dumb.
Yeah. She doesn't seem to get away. She doesn't seem to know a way around that talking point yet.
Yeah.
Which they're going to come up with. They're going to come up with something.
But this,
here's my biggest question is I feel like we're reaching a point where, depending on who's in power, the other side just absolutely hates the government and everything that it does. Mm-hmm. And so my thing is how is it so difficult for these people to put two and two together? It's okay, for half of your life, you hate the government. you want them involved in your entire medical care?
Yeah.
Whereas like half the time you're going to have a Trump doctor and half the time you're going to have a doctor you agree with. Like that's who you want running this ridiculously complicated industry.
I mean, the government's shut down right now because of this extension of these expanded Obamacare subsidies. Trump's in power right now. Like, you want that?
You want your doctors not being paid?
Want government shut down to be determining whether or not you're going to get health care?
You want your heart surgery to be rescheduled because the government currently isn't funded and the hospital can't, and the surgery center can't put the lights on, because they can't pay the bills. It's just it's always mind-boggling to me. It's like, okay, well, let's take the most complicated industry we have and I know who should run it, the government.
Yeah.
They're so great. It takes 10 years to get a permit.
For digging rocks out of the ground.
I can't understand it, man. I mean, I get it. I get that people want health care. I totally understand that. I mean, if you have, especially if you have children where you want your children to be seen and get checkups and like you worry about their health and safety and all those things. And I get that it's way too expensive. I mean, it's a challenge for a lot of people to decide whether or not they're going to go to the doctor. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. But the solutions that are being proposed is always about more control, which is going to lead to disaster.
And more control, more taxpayer money paying for these things, which is why they became so expensive in the first place.
It's the same problem the mines are having.
Yeah.
The regulations that make it financially not viable.
Which is why I linked the two together for today's show.
And I see this a lot because I work on this side of healthcare. I talk with HIM professionals every day. If you don't know what that means, they're health information management professionals, and part of their duties is to code claims. Now, what does that mean? Well, I know we've covered this before, but when you go to the doctor or hospital and something is done to you or for you, let's say you got an MRI and then, the doctor removed a skin tag that you had, and, you talked about some prescription drugs, and then they noticed your MRI that you had a real problem. You need to go to the emergency room and be seen, and then they admit you to the hospital and they run all these tests or whatever. All of the stuff that's done, okay, has to be, when you're done and you leave the hospital or whatever, someone gets your chart, okay? It's on the computer, okay? They get your chart, and you've now been discharged and sent home. And then someone has to put that in like literally a foreign language that has to then be sent out. And what I mean by that is they have to code your claim, they have to code your visit in a way that adheres to government standards, government regulations. And there's all kinds of them, okay? You have NTAPs, which is new technology payments. You have CPT codes and HCPCS. You have DRGs and APCs and all of this different. The way I describe people who are coders or auditors of coders who understand the medical diagnosis and procedures and things like that happen to you. So these people are certified coders, medical professionals, like through RHIA or other credentialing. They have to go to school for this. And essentially, you take a very specific credentialing program that gives you basically the level of education of a freaking medical doctor. Why? And by the way, you get paid as like a receptionist. So you have to have the knowledge of a doctor, but you get paid as a receptionist. Why? Because the coders, when they get your chart, your visit, they have to go, they read all the documentation. They look at all of the imaging. They look at all of the things that happened to you during your visit. And then they have to know how to look up the legitimately coded language that the United States government through Medicare and Medicaid have decided need to be present on your claim in order for it to be paid. Now, why is that? Why did they do that? Well, it's because the government started paying for your health care with Medicare and Medicaid. So they needed to come up with a system and have basically this all-encompassing payment plan or pay structure so that when you visited the hospital with certain symptoms or certain things were done to you, it was going to cost around about this much, and they're going to say, well, this is what we'll reimburse you for these services that you provided. Well, guess what happened after that? Well, the commercial payers jumped on board because then guess what? If you don't get it right, they can decide not to pay you. They'll deny it. They'll say, oh, look, I know that you did this open heart surgery. This guy has a cracked chest. He still has stitches in there, but you put the wrong code on it. So we're not going to pay you for it until you figure out how to code it right. This is just one part, by the way. This is the mid-revenue cycle of healthcare. And we could talk for days about this, but it's so frustrating to me that then we want to take this already heavily government-involved regulated system. It's like, well, I have a better idea. Let's just give the government full control when we should realize that the problems we are having is because of government control in the first place. Let's start to roll back some of those government regulations and imagine if you could just go into the doctor and you see a menu of service items. It's like, or even let the doctor recommend it to you. And by the way, I do this. You can do this. Okay, you can go to the doctor and you could say, do this with your vets too. You could say, okay, here's my symptoms. Here's what I'm experiencing. What do you recommend? And the doctor will be like, well, maybe I'll recommend this, this, and this based on my expertise. Like, okay, cool. What does all that cost? Be like, doctors usually like, well, I don't know, but we can get you an itemized statement or whatever. Like, okay, well, submit your recommendations to the billing people. Come back to me with what this is going to cost. And then you can have a conversation. And I've done this before. You can say, okay, well, based on your expertise and everything you recommended me to do is $1,000, but I have a budget of $500. So if I can only spend $500, what are the things that you recommend off of this list? And they'll be like, oh, well, I would do 1, 3, 4, and 7. And you're like, okay, cool. Let's do that. You can do that. Mm-hmm. It would be nice if you could do that without having to involve insurance because the price of those items would drop drastically. Yeah. If it was actually a free market, legit healthcare system. And then everybody could afford healthcare. And if you couldn't afford it then, it would be much easier for charities to provide that funding for you. And it would be a much better system. It would be much freer, much better. The medications would be cheaper. Your doctor visits would be cheaper. I mean, my God, you could pay Netflix prices, monthly subscription to your physician, and it would be fine. Mm-hmm. Everybody would be taken care of. But we can't do that. We can't do that right now because, and you'll see a lot of doctors are starting to not accept insurance. And the reason for that is because it becomes such an administrative regulatory burden that your customer acquisition cost goes through the roof. You can't financially sustain it. It's insane. And I say all that to say we shouldn't have a single payer government controlled system.
It sounds way easier to just say, well, the government's going to pay for it.
I know you had to pee.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that.
I went on a little healthcare run.
Yeah. I should have gone to pee during that time.
By the way, we have lots more on healthcare we could talk about. I should write a book.
Yeah.
I need to write a healthcare book so people understand this.
Healthcare payer book.
People understand what's actually wrong with healthcare.
Revenue cycle book.
Yeah.
About healthcare. All right. Yeah, I gotta pee. But that was great.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Nate's he's had too many Dr. Peppers.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, share it around. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Go to godhatesfeds.com, pick up some merchandise, or join gmail.com. Be part of the Fed Haters Club. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I already said that. Visit the links in the show notes to support the sponsors that support this show, like prolonlife.com/GML. That link will be in there where you could get a wonderful box shipped to your house that's going to help you, optimize your weight and, optimize yourself with their delicious vegetable packed soups you can make, little powders.
I actually think this part's really funny because you didn't get the box. I got the box. And so you're trying to describe, you haven't read the ad and you haven't seen the box.
I did look at their website.
And so you're just trying to describe what you think could potentially be in the box.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. It's a great box.
It is. I'm not
Wonderful
even going to
box.
throw it away. It's like an Apple box.
What I'm saying is visit the links in the show notes. Like protonlife.com/GML.
ProLon.
That's
Life.
ProLon. Not to be confused with Peloton. That company went out of business. ProLon.
I think they still exist.
Well, I guess they restructured. ProLonLife.com/GML. That, among other sponsored links, will be in the show notes. So check those out. And if you do all that, we'll be back again tomorrow for some Dumb Bleep of the Week. Until then, I hope you have a good day and a good morning, Liberty.